Hi guys, I'd like to do a video talking a little bit about the link between chronic pain and the human response to chronic pain and spirituality, because I have suffered with my own form of chronic pain now for on and off for about 10 years, but actually in the last couple of years it's really kind of exacerbated and at one point started to really take over my life. And I was thinking the other day, when it kind of cropped up again recently and I had to go back to the doctor and I had to take some more time off work, a day and a half off work, I was kind of thinking about the link between the two and how that link can be sometimes quite difficult. Spirituality lends a lot of peace and tranquil feeling to patients of chronic pain. Spirituality does a lot of good for patients who incidentally are also spiritual and have chronic pain, because, you know, far for me to say that anybody should just go out and grab a spirituality because they're in pain. That's not the point that I'm making. But people who are incidentally spiritual and do start to suffer from chronic pain do get a lot of comfort from their spiritual pathway, and that's something that I have always appreciated. But I do feel that there's also a massive downside that can come from being spiritual or being engaged with the spiritual community and having chronic pain. Sometimes, you know, there are feelings that come along with that that can be quite difficult, so I would like to address them as well. I'll tell you just briefly what my story is first. I actually had a snowboarding accident when I was 19 years old. And it was weird because I actually took a really nasty tumble during a really good lesson where I was flying, everything was going my way, and then I just ended up like taking some kind of really crazy fall and just landing on my back, and it was all a bit dramatic. And my tutor was stood over me saying, you know, only stand up when you feel right to do so. And I stood up eventually, a bit dazed and confused, and I got on with the lesson. Nothing happened that day, but the next day I couldn't get up. I couldn't sit up in bed. My torso felt that it had completely disconnected itself from my legs. My spinal column felt very odd. I had spasms running down both legs all the way to the toes. It was quite scary, and my mother was quite afraid, because I was still living at home at that time, and she was really scared when I told her that, you know, I couldn't control my legs and I couldn't feel that I was connected to my legs, but, you know, I could feel them when people touched them. I could feel them, but there was a total lack of connection there. I just felt completely helpless, and I ended up being taken to hospital and being shot full of pain relief and being told that I needed physio and stuff. So yeah, it turned out that what I had gotten was a form of really acute sciatica coupled with this spasmodic problem in the top of my neck called torticollis, and one tends to exacerbate the other. And unfortunately, it seems that I am going to have this now for the rest of my life to some degree or another. But for years after I had this accident, I never really did anything about it properly. They put me on diazepam, which is Valium for the Americans amongst you, put me on diazepam for about 10 days. I totally zoned out. But after that, I didn't go in for any of the treatment that they suggested for me. I was 19, I was young, I was very overzealous, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm okay now, I don't need any of that stuff. So I just got on with my life, and every time I got the pain over the subsequent years, I just used to take a few ibuprofen or do a few stretches and it would go away. So I never really dealt with it properly in the kind of holistic sense that they were suggesting that I did. And eventually it came to the stage a couple of years ago where it came back with a vengeance. I mean, it came back really severely. And on New Year's Day of 2010, I actually woke up one morning and again could not get up. I had that same feeling that I had when I was 19, and it was deeply unpleasant and quite scary. And they had to drive me to the walk-in centre, and I got shot full of all these different drugs. I couldn't walk properly. I was hunched over when I could walk. I was walking, you know, very much kind of like a decrepit sort of old woman. So, you know, it all came back, and the drama continued. I tried to work with it for a few more months. I had a full-time office job working as a health advisor. That's what a large part of my adult working life has been about, advising on healthcare, being a dispenser in a pharmacy, all that kind of thing. I tried to carry on working, and after a few months I realised it was just going to be impossible. Without the drugs that they were putting me on, I was in agony, and with the drugs that they were putting me on, I couldn't work. I was dazed and confused. I couldn't handle a keyboard. I couldn't work out what I was doing. So I ended up being signed off for a year of my working life. And I didn't really end up going back to work properly full time until last May. So, there has been quite a big strip of my life, which is basically just been full time chronic pain. I just haven't been able to handle working. So, that's basically my story with chronic pain. And the way I'd say that my pain is chronic now is that there's not really, even on what I would consider to be a good day, there's not really a period of time that goes by during the day when I am not aware of my back. When I'm not aware of what it's doing, what the pain level is on a scale from 1 to 10. I may have slight twinges in my legs, slight twinges in my upper back, lower back, neck, torticollis, rears its ugly head and then goes away, but it's never okay. There's always some degree of pain or discomfort, and it's always something that I'm consistently aware of. So it's become something that's normal in my life, but has never become comfortable. It's always discomfort. It's just that it's become the natural run of things, unfortunately. It's like it's par for the course now. Excuse me, I've literally just come back from the office and I just have to drink tea. So, a few things I wanted to talk about with regard to chronic pain and spirituality. The first is that I think spirituality is very important in my life when it comes to making the distinction between pain and suffering. For me, even though I'm always in some degree of pain or discomfort, or always worrying about the idea that pain will somehow be imminent. So, for example, if I'm going on a long walk and I'm not actually in any pain with my back, I will always be monitoring how long have I been walking for, how long has it been since I sat down, when was the last time I did any stretches, because it's always that preventative measure that I need in order to make sure that pain or spasms don't sort of become imminent. It's very useful and handy for me in my spiritual path, particularly with regard to things like quietening the mind, mindfulness, meditation, and stuff. Useful for me to see the difference between pain and suffering. Just because I'm in some degree of pain or discomfort doesn't necessarily mean that I'm suffering with it all the time. And in fact, my outlook is so positive, and I kind of can keep myself very positive in a lot of ways because I'm practicing mindfulness, I'm in the moment, I'm not harbouring too much resentment about the fact that the accident happened in the first place, nor am I worrying overly about what's going to happen in the future, because neither of those things are going to help me. So mindfulness is, to a degree, an excellent source of pain relief and an excellent source of emotional balance and well-being for people that are going through chronic pain. So that's something that I have always valued with regard to spirituality. And I think that a lot of people that have experienced chronic pain will tell you that, pain that's ongoing, pain that becomes par for the course in your life, has a great emotional toll attached to it. And my spiritual pathway certainly has helped me to establish some sense of acceptance and perspective when it comes to my chronic pain. And there are certain times during my life with chronic pain, particularly the first 6 months that I was off work, where at times I would lose that perspective. And that is completely understandable for people with chronic pain. It is very emotionally draining. It's quite scary as well when you start thinking about, God, how long am I going to have this for? Is it going to get worse over time? Am I ever going to be able to work again? All this kind of thing. It can be a scary place to be, and you can lose your rag when you're backed into a corner by fear, and you start to believe that fear really isn't a choice. Fear is something that you are being pushed into through this constant pain. It does ravage your sense of emotional balance, and I do think that spirituality kind of pulls me back onto that sense of emotional balance that I kind of need to deal with it, I guess. And my spiritual pathway helps me to find quiet. It helps me to just find that place where the noise of the chronic pain kind of goes away. And I wouldn't say that I've ever geared my spiritual pathway towards this chronic pain that's come about. I was very much a pagan when the accident happened, and I've always been very much practicing kind of one avenue of that pagan spirituality or another, dependent upon what the focus has been. So I wouldn't say that, when I started experiencing this chronic pain, it became like a major aspect of my spirituality or a major aspect of my spiritual focus, but I would just say that I'm sure that over the years, the fact that I'm spiritual has been highly convenient. In light of the fact that when I was 19 I had this accident and I've kind of had this chronic pain ever since. So I would say that finding quiet has been a really important thing for me in my spirituality with regard to how I deal with the pain and how to keep on that emotional pathway, that level-headedness where you don't lose your rag and you don't succumb to rage and don't succumb to apathy, which is another really, really big kind of emotional disease that buries its way under your skin with chronic pain. It certainly has for me. Apathy was a big thing for a long time. And I think spirituality just helps me as well to gain some kind of perspective. I mean, obviously, there's a great deal of reverence for life, the universe, and everything in pantheism, and that idea of interconnectedness and of the web of all life and the cycle of life. And these things make you feel very small and very in awe and very in touch with things that are of a far greater magnitude than are ever going to be comprehensible in my lifetime. So, those things make me feel very kind of level and comfortable with my existence, and I think that's a big part of what's helped me to gain that sense of perspective, is the awe that you feel, that dark joy that you feel at thinking about these great big things and the web of life and the cosmos and such. It kind of does really distract you from your pain in a lot of ways, I guess you could say. Another thing I think is important about paganism and about pantheism in particular is the notion of seeing the beauty in absolutely everything. And I think sometimes, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, sometimes when you realise that you are the kind of human being, you are the calibre of human being that can actually see the beauty or the intrigue or the usefulness in your own experience of pain, in your own human experience of discomfort, that is a very humbling thing. And that is something that makes you realise that you can go through a lot more than you think you can. And I'm one of those people that, even though I obviously understand that on a basic level humans have the urge towards pleasure and the urge away from pain, I do feel that I'm one of those people that's always been very intrigued by her own sense of pain and discomfort, and who understands that it is part of the holistic process and that it needs to be respected and endured, and you need to find some sense of fascination in the things that go right for you, wrong for you, as well as the things that go right for you, I think. And also, because I'm a very creative person, I try to channel a lot of the issues that I have surrounding chronic pain, or indeed any pain or trauma or emotional issue or anything. I try to channel that into my writing and my art. So that's another way in which I can get some sense of perspective, I suppose. And another thing is that losing yourself in prayer, or losing yourself in ritual, losing yourself to the meditative state, that kind of thing. Obviously, your reality is being more clearly defined, in fact, when you go into the meditative state. It's kind of a big misconception that you're trying to go away from reality. You're actually trying to get closer to the reality that's behind the illusory web, or in my idea of meditation, it's not so much the fact that it's an illusory web, it's more the fact that it's not actually in touch with my core being. So when I meditate, I'm thinking about the fact that my thoughts and my feelings are not actually my core, because I can observe my thoughts and I can observe my feelings as I'm having them and as I'm experiencing them. So the core is something deeper. The core is just the moment, nothing more and nothing less. So it's pure simplicity that I'm going after. And when I lose myself in that meditative state, I am losing a sense of the chronic pain that I am dealing with and enduring to certain degrees and kind of grappling with and worrying about, whatever it is. Like I said, every day it's on my mind to one degree or another. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff on my mind, and when we start YouTube channels like the one that I started here, you'll only see a very small portion of what goes on in my life and the kind of person that I am. I'm only talking about a very specific subject on this channel. There's a lot of stuff about me that will never get to see the light of day on this channel at all. So even though you can probably get a sense of it, essentially it's a channel about spirituality. Let's be real here, there's a lot more to me than that. There are a lot more interests that I have and a lot more things that I do. So I think obviously it's difficult to kind of put that forward, but I lose myself in that spiritual aspect of me, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. And another thing is that a great deal of pagan pathways teach reverence for the self and teach the importance of taking care of yourself. And within certain avenues of witchcraft, you have ideas about taking care of the vessel, which is channeling the energy which you wish to manifest in a certain way, looking after your body because it is part of the instrument that you're using to direct energy correctly, and also just honouring and respecting yourself because you are part of the all that you are intending to revere. So it would make no sense, if you were not respectful towards your vessel and if you didn't honour your vessel. That kind of wouldn't make sense in the circle where you are honouring all life, or indeed certain key components or aspects of life that you wish to kind of address. So I think taking care of yourself and remembering not to succumb to the urge towards self-negligence, which is a big urge sometimes when you have chronic pain. Anyone who has had ongoing pain that kind of becomes part of their life for any length of time will tell you self-negligence is actually one of those things that sometimes you just want to throw your hand and just jump into. You know, it's that apathy thing again with chronic pain that's so prevalent, unfortunately, after a while. It's this sense of complete exhaustion, total resentment, a total feeling of why the fuck should I bother, to be frank. You know, these feelings that kind of take you away from the sense of how important it is to still respect and look after yourself, to check in with yourself. It's very boring checking in with yourself constantly regarding an ongoing issue which is systemic, which you kind of know is not going to go away. You know, it's tedious. It's just total tedium, and sometimes that can lead you towards feelings of like, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to bother taking my meds or doing my stretches, doing my yoga, going for a walk. Particularly when I was off work for that length of time, that was something that spirituality helped me with, was taking care of myself, being aware of myself, being aware of myself in my body, but also being aware that, you know, I believe that I am, like all things that I can witness and all things I can feel and see and all things outside of that realm of human experience, I'm divine. So, you know, it's not a good show to kind of not take care of myself because I'm divine. So, you know, that kind of helped me in a way, I guess you could say. But there are a few things about chronic pain and spirituality which I find to be quite negative. And it's kind of maybe difficult for me to talk about on some levels, but I'm going to try and explain what I mean. The first thing is, I think that holistic treatments and holistic medicine, holistic well-being, obviously taps into this idea that most disease or all disease and pain and discomfort in the body comes from an imbalance in the overall holistic self. So the idea is that we don't actually target that one pain or that one sense of discomfort or that one disease and treat it as, you know, something that's attacking the body. We actually look at the body as a holistic um, machine or organism, and we say that anything that kind of attacks that organism or is in resistance to the well-being of that organism is as the result of some imbalance which needs to be found and kind of reharmonized or leveled out, I suppose you could say. And I think this is kind of difficult for me because the idea of looking at my chronic pain as an imbalance that somehow needs to be righted is sometimes a little insulting or offensive or makes things sound a little bit too simplistic. And I think it's very important when we're talking about the treatment of pain through spiritual means or in a spiritual way, it's very important to remember that people that have any kind of pain or discomfort at all, whether it was through the result of injury or through the result of God knows what else, you know, whether we know the reason for it or not, we can become very sensitive about the pain that we're going through. It affects us on an individual, deeply personal level. And sometimes the emotions that are tied up with our sense of who we are when we're going through this pain can be very difficult and complex, and it's very easy for somebody to come along and say, you know, holistic medicine will help you to right the imbalance. Like for example, I had a friend when my back pain first became absolutely excruciating and didn't seem like there was anything anyone could do. I had a friend who was talking about body alignment and taking me to a body alignment practitioner, and she said, well, basically this body alignment practitioner will have a look at where the off energies are in your body, and she'll talk you through basically what you can do from a holistic medicine standpoint, but she'll also talk you through things that you're doing in your emotional life or blockages that are inherent or things that you could be doing sort of spiritually and emotionally to free up that good energy so that you don't, you know, experience this back pain on this level anymore. And immediately I was completely put off. I did not want to go through this body alignment thing at all, and I flatly said no, because I think it's very easy for these practitioners to come along from an outside perspective and start talking about tangled energies or this and that you're not doing in your emotional life, that's kind of opening the door for back pain to come in and steal your soul or whatever. And I think that this can get very cynical very quickly, and it can completely disregard the feelings of the sufferer. I think it's all too easy to start talking about somebody's pain in spiritual terms as though they have that much control over it, that if they just let go of, you know, this denial or let go of this way of living, everything will be resolved. I think that's kind of a bit of a snake oil salesman territory. It can be. I'm not saying that, you know, with everything, but I think it's very, very important when you're dealing with patients that have chronic pain or any kind of discomfort like that, and you're addressing it from a spiritual perspective, that you understand that feelings are sensitive and feelings run high, emotions run deep on this subject, and it's not okay for you to just step into somebody else's long-term situation and start talking about how, you know, they're spiritually impoverished and that's why this or that has happened to them. So I think there's a little bit of a blame game in the holistic medicine area at times with regard to talking about imbalances and general things that can be done to right the wrongs, when really, if we're being honest with ourselves, pain is pain in a lot of cases. I know why I'm in pain. And unfortunately, yes, I will always deal with varying degrees of that pain, but I don't think it's going to help me to have a practitioner tell me that there are all these certain spiritual and emotional things I could do to help, because I think it's just something that I'm going to take personally and it's going to be hurtful to me. The spiritual blame game as well with regard to karma is not something that I've ever come across, but some people, I have been told, they've told me about their own experiences of practitioners saying, well, this is karma and it's a certain amount of kind of purgatory that you need to go through when it comes to karma and such. This is the kind of thing, I think, as well, which is very irresponsible and is not the kind of claim that should be bandied about when it comes to people dealing with their chronic pain. Also, one thing that I wanted to finish on was that in paganism and in New Age spirituality, there is a little bit of a hate against traditional medicine. There's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of backlash against it. There are a lot of studies being done that are kind of attacking the realm of traditional medicine. And some of these claims are valid and some of these arguments are valid. And I'm not going to get into like the great debate about vaccination or about holistic versus traditional medicine or anything like that. But I do think that the realm of complementary therapy is very important to remember. For example, I genuinely don't think in my heart of hearts that my back problem could have kind of leveled out to an acceptable standard of pain that a human being can deal with on a day-by-day basis if it wasn't for diazepam in the initial stages of the flare-up. Diazepam, and to a lesser extent methocarbamol, cocodamol and naproxen, I suppose to degrees as well, did help with a lot of the relaxing of the muscles and things like that I was going through, the tension. My body was locked, basically. It was absolutely locked up tight, and those drugs helped to relax the muscles. They gave the musculoskeletal system a chance to breathe, a chance to do its work, to right itself. And I don't think that traditional medicine can just be written off with pain. However, I do think that there is a laziness that comes with traditional medicine, and I do understand why a lot of people that follow a spiritual pathway which invites holistic medicine and that kind of thing, I do understand why there's a backlash against traditional medicines, because there is also a laziness as well. It's kind of like this idea that if you pop a few pills that the doctor gives you, then everything should right itself, and then people start questioning why things aren't righting themselves when they take the drugs that are prescribed, when of course complementary therapy, alternative therapy, there are all these different ways that you yourself can engage with and connect with your body. You know, I would not tell anybody to throw the drugs down the toilet, unless of course you're having a very adverse reaction to them or anything like that. I would not say that traditional medicine should be rejected purely on spiritual grounds. I think it should be experiential, and I think that we should listen to the people who are taking traditional meds to cope with chronic pain and listen to their individual experiences, completely unfettered by the urge to just kick prescription drugs out the window because we're spiritualists. I don't think that's right. I think it needs to be experiential, and it needs to be on a one by one basis. We can't just club together and say, you know, screw the drugs that the doctor gives you, because they have no spiritual basis, they have no spiritual core, you know, or they're kind of like suffocating the soul or whatever. It needs to be on a one-on-one basis, and we need to listen to everybody, and there needs to be a platform and a dialogue. But I do understand this idea that there's some laziness when it comes to traditional medicine, that people just pop the pills and then they expect everything to be okay. Whereas certainly with back complaints like the one I have, of course physiotherapy was part of what I did, ballet conditioning, and to a lesser extent Pilates was part of what I did. I experimented with different hydro meditation techniques and things like that. There are things that you can do alongside traditional medicine, but I do think it's very important that we steer ourselves away from this area of spiritual medicine which is basically just tarring all traditional drugs with the same brush, I think that is dangerous. And that's kind of all I really wanted to say for now. I don't want to get too much deeper into it, but just because of the fact that I've had a flare up lately and I've been thinking so much about different ways in which pain and spirituality fit together, both in a beautiful way but also sometimes in quite a harmful, a damaging, or an ignorant way as well. I think it's two sides to the coin, and I kind of just wanted to address them both and talk about them both a little bit. And if anyone has anything that they'd like to say or any responses they'd like to make about their own chronic pain, or the chronic pain of their loved ones that they've maybe tried to help through complementary medicine, or opinions about traditional medicine, feel free. I'm always open to hearing what other people have to say, which is totally why I joined YouTube in the first place. So blessed be for now, people. Much love, and thank you very much for listening.